Let's bring in Kim Darroch first of all, though. What did you feel when you saw those images last night?
Appalled and horrified, but I have to say not completely surprised. The president has been riding up his base for several days now. He has been encouraging people to pitch up in Washington on the day of the congressional vote and to demonstrate. He did a speech, as did members of his family, to the crowds, and he urged them to march on the Capitol. What did he think was going to happen when they got there? That they would just sit around and watch events and then go quietly home? I mean, this was incited, there's no question, and it was a quite terrible scene which will do huge damage to America's reputation around the world.
I mean, in terms of that damage around the world, you've worked in diplomatic circles for a long time. What is that damage?
Well, there have been scenes before, several times in my career, of crowds, protesters, mobs descending on parliaments or on presidential offices, but not, if I can say this, not in a country like America. So it is extraordinary and unprecedented. And I think there will have been jubilation in the Kremlin this morning. They'll have watched proceedings in Beijing and thought, so this is what democracy looks like now, is it? And all of those countries around the world that saw America as a beacon, the shining city on the hill, will be thinking again. I mean, this damage can be repaired, but it'll take a long time.
What should the UK be doing now, do you think?
Look, Biden will be inaugurated on the 20th of January. With the Democrats now having the Senate, he will get his cabinet and his senior appointments through, I think. We'll need to build relations with the Biden administration, and there's a way to go there. I worry about the period between now, the 13 days between now and the 20th, because there's more opportunities for the president, if he chooses, to incite and rile up his supporters. And obviously, the day of the inauguration is a potential flashpoint. But you would hope, particularly on the back of that tweet from a member of the White House on the president's behalf today, that he has realized that this is not helping him. Even if his objective is to run again in 2024 and to keep his base with him, this isn't helping him, I don't think.
Let's bring in Omarosa Manigault Newman, a former advisor to Donald Trump. Thanks so much for joining us. You've tweeted this morning, our time for the 25th Amendment. Do you think realistically that should be applied to Donald Trump over the next 2 weeks?
There is no question that the 25th Amendment should be enacted. And certainly the images from yesterday is an indicator that Donald Trump is unable to fulfill the responsibilities and the duties of his office. He, in fact, earlier that day, giving remarks to this mob, encouraged them to storm the Capitol, to go to the Capitol. And he said, you can't be weak. You have to be forceful. That truly is a threat to this country. Donald Trump should be removed from office immediately.
He said in his tweet today, about making America great again, suggesting, Omarosa, that this is not finished as far as he is concerned in terms of future politics. Do you think he has any future in American politics now?
Well, certainly watching his rise to power in 2015, being there on the front row, I would never say never, but Donald Trump has certainly weakened his chances of anyway getting a majority of Americans to vote for him. But moreover, his base will soon see that Donald Trump is a threat to everything that we stand for in this country. And so 4 years, it's a long time, particularly when he's facing investigations, possible jail time, crimes and criminal behavior that will be investigated over and over again for the next 4 years. I certainly don't see a path for Donald Trump being president again. But like I said, never say never in American politics.
Lord Darroch, let's just bring you back in. I mean, do you think British politicians who've worked closely with Trump are damaged at all by what happened last night? Are they Will they be looked back at in history and have be seen to misjudge that relationship?
I think they will try and move on from it. They will try and claim that they were never that close to him. And I mean, if you look at policies, Boris Johnson is a very different place from Donald Trump on quite a lot of issues. But there are some things they have said over the Trump presidency that I think that they will now regret, and I think will stick with them. We got a bit too close to the Trump presidency, and we were too warm. Our leaders were too warm about Trump's performance. I mean, this is the worst of the things that has happened in the Trump presidency. But don't let's forget his words about white supremacists being very fine people in Charlottesville, his words about American congresswomen of color, they should go back to where they came from, and some of the other events of his presidency. This is part of a pattern of a president who just does not follow the norms of presidential behavior, and never has, really.
You say some politicians being too warm towards him. Are there any examples you can give us?
Well, I just note that while some of the European politicians have been openly critical and named the president in terms of criticizing his denial of the election outcome and some of the events since the election, and particularly the events of last night, our politicians have tended to, as it were, criticize or condemn the events without name-checking the president. And I understand why they do that. Look, I was in government for 40 years, and I spent some of that time as a press spokesman. And I can imagine the press spokesman drafting texts for their ministers that try to avoid being too explicit about Donald Trump's personal responsibility for what has happened. But look, to all of us now sitting outside government, it's undeniable.
Omarosa Manigault Newman, Al Scardino, who we spoke to a little earlier, I don't know if you were able to see it, talked about what happened last night, about white supremacists, which Lord Darroch also referred to just there. That he said he felt that what happened last night was, in his words, a culmination of the counter-revolution of the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s. What do you feel about that? Do you feel that this is as significant as that?
I think it is certainly significant, but I also want to just bring you back to just months ago when Black Lives Matter protesters were in Washington, D.C., and tanks were rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue and Constitutional Avenue, and the show of force from the military, from Capitol Police, from Metropolitan Police was just unheard of. And then to juxtapose that to yesterday, where there was absolutely no presence, a very minimal presence, it makes African Americans feel unsafe in this country. It makes us feel as though we are certainly back in the times where dogs were released on protesters and where you couldn't walk down the street without being harassed. Yesterday was a very consequential day for African Americans in this country, and a day of reckoning on race for this country as well.
Do you think that any positives will come of it, Omarosa? I mean, do you think that it will cause people in America who perhaps aren't black and perhaps haven't realised how bad things have got for so many black people in America to sit up and take notice?
Yesterday, even some of my former colleagues in the White House, who I remain in touch with, had to acknowledge that that this administration failed on racial reckoning, in fact, inflamed the divisions. And so when you ask about one positive note, I guess the positive note is that we can count down the 13 days left in Donald Trump's administration and call it what it is. Donald Trump will go down as the most racist president in the history of our nation.
Great to talk to you both, Omarosa Manigault Newman and also Lord Kim Darroch. Thank you both very much for joining us.